Hey there, welcome to Let's Get Started. If this is the first time you're joining us, thanks for tuning in. If you're a returning customer, it's great to have you back. Today we're going to be taking a look at some Witch Hunters Codex lore, which is the original Adepta Sororitas from 3rd edition. We'll be going through pages 1 through 10 and doing a little paint along as well. So if you want to grab a model and paint along with me, please feel free to do so. Let's get started. Codex, Witch Hunters. Page 1. The second book of the Inquisition Hereticus. Contents. Page 2. Codex, Witch Hunters. Welcome, learned Inquisitor, to the secret texts of the Witch Hunter. Within these hallowed pages you will find all you need to guide you in collecting, painting, and gaming with a Witch Hunter's army in the Warhammer 40,000 game. The armies of the Witch Hunter are powerful and dangerous, commanded by the sinister and unforgiving inquisitors of the Ordo Hereticus. The chamber militant of this holy order is the virtuous and pious Adepta Sororitas, ancient orders of warrior women whose origins can be traced back to the infamous age of apostasy. The Ordo Hereticus, a branch of the Inquisition, that secretive body founded in the earliest days of the Imperium. The Ordo Hereticus stands ready to defend humanity against the myriad dangers posed by the witch, the heretic, and the mutant. The Inquisitors of the Ordo Hereticus are a sinister breed, cut from a very different cloth than that of their brethren of the Ordo Malleus and Ordo Xenos, and often their work involves the persecution of their fellow Inquisitors for trafficking with the demonic and the alien. For such activities are amongst the most heinous of crimes in the Imperium. Such is the power wielded by an Inquisitor that he can call upon every branch of the armed forces of the Imperium, and none can refuse his call. Even the Space Marines may be called upon to aid an Inquisitor, should the threat be greater than he and any locally requisitioned forces are able to counter. Rising from the ashes of the age of apostasy, when the insane Lord Vandire plunged the Imperium into one of the bloodiest periods in its already blood-stained history, the Ordo Hereticus are the guardians of humanity's future, in conjunction with their chamber militant, the Adepta Sororitas, also known as the Sisters of Battle. The Ordo Hereticus hunt down and destroy most insidious threats to humanity, the enemy within, witchcraft, heresy, and mutation. The Sisters of Battle are a shining example of all that is good about humanity, the pinnacle of faith, devotion, and purity. As well as forming the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus, the Sisters of Battle provide the fighting arm of the ecclesiarchy, the monolithic organization devoted to the worship of the Emperor and preaching of the Imperial Creed. Armed with the finest weapons and armour the ecclesiarchy can provide, they are amongst the best and bravest warriors an Inquisitor can call upon. Open quote. We are at war with forces too terrible to comprehend. We cannot afford mercy for any of its victims too weak to take the correct course. Mercy destroys us, it weakens us, and saps our resolve. Put aside all such thoughts. They are not worthy of Inquisitors in the service of our Emperor. Praise his name, for in our resolve we only reflect his purpose of will. Close quote. Inquisitor Enoch. Castigations on the Last Days. Why collect a Witch Hunter's army? The Witch Hunters is an incredibly characterful army, with a wide selection of deadly troops at its disposal and the power of faith to command. The Sisters of Battle are exceptionally well equipped, with armour and weapons the equal of any Space Marine chapter. Their faith and devotion to the Emperor can be manifested as a potent force in itself, empowering sisters with all manner of miraculous abilities, such as shrugging off wounds that would kill a normal person, or holding them fast in the face of overwhelming odds. The Inquisitors of the Ordo Hereticus can utilize some truly fearsome instruments in the persecution of their foes. Ancient artifacts, blessed by the holiest of saints, and powerful weapons that have been handed down through the ages in the fight against witches and all wielders of warp-spawned magics. Together with their faithful retainers, the Witch Hunters can be sure of having the right combination of skills at his disposal, whatever the foe. In addition, any Inquisitor can requisition a fearsome array of allies to fight alongside him, from the lethal operatives of the Officio Assassinorum to the frenzied Arco Flagellants and the mighty death machines of the Penitent Engines. If you are after an army that can be tailored to make an elite force with enormous potential for variety, then this is the army for you. A great strength of the Witch Hunters army list is its ease of integration with existing armies. If you already have an army of the Imperium, such as the Space Marines or Imperial Guard, it can easily be incorporated into the Witch Hunters list. For instance, a Space Marine player may choose to lead his force into battle with an Adepta Sororitas heroine and her Celestian bodyguard, or an Imperial Guard player may choose to add a couple of platoons of infantry to his Witch Hunters force. Conversely, we also include rules that allow the opponents of the Witch Hunters to take units of traitors and mutants in their force, as well as rules for having your army led into battle by a powerful witch or heretic. There's also the option to bestow terrifying psychic powers upon your existing army commander, since it's perfectly plausible that he has developed latent psychic powers and is leading his army against those who would hunt him down and destroy him. Exactly why the Witch Hunters are called into action. The miniatures in the Witch Hunters range are wonderfully detailed and well crafted, and a fully painted army looks fantastic on the tabletop. On the one hand, you have ranks of Sisters of Battle, resplendent in their ornate armour, while on the other you have the highly individual and characterful Inquisitors, accompanied by their retinues of henchmen. While the Sisters of Battle are exceptional warriors and can easily take to the field of battle alone, it is when they are combined with the powerful troops at the disposal of an Inquisitor that they really come into their own, though it will take many gaming sessions to truly get the most out of the more unusual elements of the Witch Hunters army list. Have fun, and may the power of faith guide you. Page 4. The Ecclesiarchy and the Ordo Hereticus. The Ecclesiarchy has provided guidance to the servants of the Emperor for nearly 10,000 years, through some of the darkest times imaginable. Such was the Emperor's preternatural charisma and strength that many worshipped him as a god, even before his near death at the hands of the traitorous War Master Horus. The War Master's treachery had almost destroyed the Imperium, which was left teetering on the brink of anarchy. In these bleak times, spiritual guidance was needed as never before, and as the news of the Emperor's supreme sacrifice spread, adoration and worship swept through the Imperium. Visionaries appeared on many worlds, preaching that the Emperor still watched over the faithful, and these divinely inspired individuals quickly attracted hordes of disciples. Soon these cults were spreading through the galaxy, the strongest growing and prospering, subsuming or eradicating the smaller ones until one particular sect of the Emperor worshippers grew to dominate them all. The Temple of the Saviour Emperor. The Temple of the Saviour Emperor. Billions upon billions revered the Emperor until, by the start of the 32nd millennium, almost 2/3 of the Imperium was united by his worship. Only the warriors of the Adepta Sororitas and the adepts of the cult Mechanicus were exempt from the cult's tenets, having their own beliefs, traditions, and forms of worship. Less than a century later, the Temple of the Saviour Emperor was officially recognized as the official religion of the Imperium and given the title Adeptus Ministorum, or Ecclesiarchy. The power of the Ecclesiarchy continued to grow to such a level that its seat in the Council of the High Lords of Terra was made permanent. With the backing of the Adeptus Terra, the Ministorum continued to extend its influence throughout the Imperium, casting out as unbelievers those who did not join its ranks. Unchallenged in matters of spiritual, the Ministorum took steps to ensure that its control would spread to all facets of the imperial life, even to the extent that the High Lords of Terra would take their lead from the head of the Ministerium, the Ecclesiarch, believing him to be the voice of the Emperor, a belief that the Ministorum did nothing to disprove. Soon the Ministorum was the de facto master of the Imperium, dictating imperial law, mustering armies, and deciding which threats to meet with force. But as the grip of the Ministorum tightened, the secular power of the Administratum fought against the absolute control, and thus began a power struggle that has lasted until the 41st millennium. Into this maelstrom of conflict stepped Goj Vandaya, 361st High Lord of the Administratum. The Age of Apostasy. At the beginning of M36, Vandaya broke the stranglehold of the Ecclesiarchy in several bold moves, overtly manipulating the Ministorum through assassination and brute force. He took control of the Ministorum in what can only be described as a military coup and assumed the dual role of Ecclesiarch and High Lord of the Administratum, driving the Imperium into the bloodiest period since the Horus Heresy, the Age of Apostasy and the Reign of Blood. Vandaya was a paranoid megalomaniac and saw plots and treachery everywhere, his mind a twisted labyrinth of suspicion and delusions. Countless millions died in the Reign of Blood, and entire worlds were destroyed by his madness. Early in his blood-soaked reign, Vandaya discovered an all-female order of warriors on the world of San Lior, known as the Daughters of the Emperor, which he renamed the Brides of the Emperor, and these became his personal bodyguard. The Reign of Blood was to continue for another 7 decades, with millions more burning in the fires of Vandaya's insanity as the years dragged on. Vandaya grew increasingly violent and his mood swings even more unpredictable. He developed a morbid fear of lights and would often wander the darkened passages of the imperial palace, lapsing into delirious ramblings and utterances. It was to this dark, forbidding place that a lone messenger delivered the news that was to herald the end of the Reign of Blood. On the world of Diminar, a sect known as the Confederation of Light had emerged and denounced Vandaya as a traitor. Led by a man known as Sebastian Thor, the Confederation of Light spread its message to a brutalized people only too ready to throw off the yoke of oppression, and soon system after system joined Sebastian Thor. A massive war fleet consisting of the majority of the Ministorum's armed forces was assembled to crush the rebellious systems, but shortly after its departure it was destroyed by a terrifyingly powerful warp storm in an area of space known and feared as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. With much of the Ministorum's forces destroyed, whole swaths of the Imperium erupted in rebellion, with scores of systems declaring for Thor and the Confederation of Light. An orator of supreme skill, Sebastian Thor swayed millions to his cause and turned the tide against Vandir. As Thor's crusade smashed against those who remained loyal to the Ecclesiarch, the Space Marines, and the Adeptus Mechanicus, who had remained largely on the defensive during the Age of Apostasy, were finally able to join forces with Thor and close on Terra. Once more, the Imperial Palace came under attack, though this time from forces loyal to the Emperor. For months, the walls of the palace withstood every assault, until at last the Adeptus Custodes, the Praetorian Guard of the Emperor himself, sought out Alicia Dominica, the leader of the brides of the Emperor and her most trusted companions. The Custodes took them before the Emperor, though what occurred there remains unknown. When they emerged from the bowels of the palace, they renounced the name of the brides in favour of their original title of Daughters of the Emperor, and marched with barely controlled fury to Vandir's audience chamber. They found him in the midst of yet another bloody tirade, and pausing only to condemn him for his crimes against the Emperor, Alicia Dominica cut the head from the traitor's shoulders. The reign of blood was over. Open quote. You have committed the ultimate heresy. Not only have you turned your back on the Emperor and stepped from his light, you have profaned his name and almost destroyed everything he has striven to build. You have perverted and twisted the path he has laid for mankind to tread. As your own decrees have stated, there can be no mercy for such a crime, no pity for such a criminal. I renounce your lordship. You walk in the darkness and cannot be allowed to live. Your sentence has been long overdue, and it is now time for you to die. Close quote. Alicia Dominica to High Lord Goj Vandir. The Reformation. Sebastian Thor eventually ascended to become Ecclesiarch, and the Ministorum was to be changed forever. He formed the Synod Ministara on Ophelia 7, an act designed to break up the power of the ecclesiarchy. No longer would one man have total power over the Ministorum and become another Vandir. Great changes were gradually implemented to bring the Ministorum back to its original inception, and most importantly, the decree passive was issued in 288.m36. This historic act forbade the Ministorum from raising men under arms, and Thor disbanded the armies and fleets that had served Vandir, incorporating the Daughters of the Emperor into the military hierarchy and renaming them the Orders Militant of the Adepta Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle. Though this sat uncomfortably with the newly reinstated High Lords of Terra, they could not oppose Thor, and his insistence that they would regulate the ecclesiarchy as much as enforce its will reassured many of his doubters. Perhaps the most important body to come into existence following the Age of Apostasy was not at Thor's instigation at all, but at the behest of the secret masters of the Emperor's Holy Orders of the Inquisition. This new organization was the Ordo Hereticus. Rise of the Witch Hunters. Ordo Hereticus arose from the ashes of the age of apostasy, formed to guard against the enemy within. While the Inquisition monitors every aspect of the Imperium as a whole, the prime concern of the Ordo Hereticus, or the Witch Hunters, as its members are more commonly known, is the apprehension and judgment of the rogue psyker, the heretic, and the mutant. Given that the stated purpose of the Adepta Sororitas and the newly formed Ordo Hereticus meshed so seamlessly, it did not take long for the duties and hierarchy of both organizations to become part of the same holy purpose. Though the Adepta Sororitas would forever remain the ecclesiarchy's primary armed force, they would also become the chamber militant of the Ordo Hereticus. A shadowy branch of the organization already swathed in secrecy, the Ordo Hereticus is the guardian of humanity, the watcher at the gates which protects mankind, as much from its own weaknesses as any threat from without. The witch hunters of the Ordo Hereticus are sinister, feared individuals, pale from long days spent in the excruciation chambers of Inquisition fortresses, or weeks spent poring over ancient texts speak of the heretic and his machinations. The arrival of an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor is met with as much trepidation as awe, since none know where their gimlet gaze may land, upon whom their suspicions might fall. In addition to monitoring the ecclesiarchy, ensuring that wars of faith do not exceed their mandate, or that its many cardinals do not amass more power than is deemed appropriate, the Ordo Hereticus keeps a close eye on many other imperial organizations, the Adeptus Arbitus, the Space Marines, and also fellow members of the Inquisition. They monitor doctrinal and physical purity, and no one is beyond their jurisdiction. It is a brave man who crosses the path of a witch hunter, as simply by opposing a member of the Ordo Hereticus, an individual may be damned and declared heretic and extremus diablos. Page 6. The Adepta Sororitas. The Adepta Sororitas came into being following Sebastian Thor's reform of the ecclesiarchy at the closing age of apostasy, when the daughters of the emperor were split into two orders at the Convent Prioris on Terra and the Convent Sanctorum on Ophelia 7. Foundations. Much of the Imperium still reeled from the devastation of Vandire's reign of blood, and so the first years of the sisterhood's existence saw Alicia Dominica leading wars of faith against a score of pretenders that followed in the renegade High Lord's wake. Silvana, Mina, Lucia, Catherine, and Arabella, those sisters who had joined her before the Golden Throne, accompanied Dominica. The Sororitas were filled with a radiant purpose, not evinced since the legendary days of the Great Crusade, and brought the burning light of the Emperor's divine judgment to the darkest corners of the Imperium. It was at the height of the Reformation that the Ordo Hereticus was formed, and it was not long before the two organizations joined to pursue their common purpose. Though the details are shrouded in mystery, the Sisterhood and the Witch Hunters formalized their relationship in the shadowy conclave referred to in whispered tones as the Convocation of Nephilim. The Convocation stated that the orders militant of the Adepta Sororitas would place themselves at the disposal of the Ordo Hereticus, whenever called to do so by a duly appointed inquisitor, forming the chamber militant of the Witch Hunters. The sisterhood would remain under the auspices of the ecclesiarchy on a day-to-day basis, and retain the rights and responsibilities granted to them by Sebastian Thor. It is postulated by some that this move came about because the High Lords of Terra, in particular the inquisitorial representative to the Sanctorium Imperialis, would not simply stand by and allow the ecclesiarchy to flout the spirit, if not the letter, of the decree passive. Under the terms of the Convocation of Nephilium, the ecclesiarchy would retain the Sisters of Battle as a fighting force, and the newly formed Ordo Hereticus would acquire an unswervingly loyal chamber militant. It is also whispered that the knowledge imparted to Dominica and her companions when brought before the Golden Throne coincided in some manner with the shadowy agenda of the Ordo Hereticus. Exactly what joint hidden mission the two organizations follow is likely only known to their highest ranking members, and many heretics have died in excruciating pain as punishment for seeking such knowledge. Expansion. In time, the Order's militant grew into large and powerful organizations, and Sebastian Thor's successor, Ecclesiarch Alexis XXII, decreed that the two convents each be divided into two orders militant. The convent prioris was split to become the Order of the Ebon Chalice, whose first leader was Dominica, and the Order of the Argent Shroud, led by Silvana. The convent Sanctorium was divided into the Order of the Fiery Heart, led by Catherine, and the Order of the Valorous Heart, led by Lucia. By late M36, the Sisters of Battle had become synonymous with the temporal power of the ecclesiarchy, enforcing its dogma and prosecuting its wars across the galaxy, all the while supporting the Ordo Hereticus in their role as chamber militant. The orders spread, establishing subsidiary convents on key worlds across the Imperium. Dominica, Catherine, Silvana, and Lucia, all of whom had been declared living saints in their own lifetimes, performed acts that would become legendary even amongst the entire galaxy of legends. But such legends seldomly end happy, and first Dominica, then Silvana, and Lucia were martyred at the hands of evil men, men jealous to their faith and purity. When Catherine was murdered by the witch cult of Menistus, her order was renamed the Order of Our Martyred Lady. So deeply did her sisters mourn her loss. In mid-M38, Ecclesiarch Dicasius VI created two more orders. The Order of the Bloody Rose, based at the Convent Sanctorium, and the Order of the Sacred Rose, based at the Convent Prioris. Both were formed from groups of sisters who venerated the remaining two companions of Dominica, Mina and Arborella. And although these long-dead martyrs never led their orders in battle, each was found in one of their names. The Bloody Rose in honour of Mina, and the Sacred Rose after Arabella. The rise of the lesser orders militant. As numbers within the orders militant waxed and waned, varying from a couple of thousand warriors to many thousand, the subsidiary convents began to take on an importance all their own. These small, scattered bases often proved ideal for reacting to requests for assistance from the Ordo Hereticus, and so over time became independent of the orders that had founded them, establishing their own traditions, doctrines, livery, and titles. Though the original 6 orders are by far the most numerous and active, the orders militant, the new lesser orders militant, or the orders minoris became especially useful in the frequent purity sweeps and pogroms instituted by the witch hunters. Footnote: The living saints. The greatest heroes of the Adepta Sororitas may, in the most exceptional of circumstances, be proclaimed living saints. This ascension is likely to occur only a handful of times in a millennium, and is the cause of great rejoicing across all the worlds of the Imperium. Before an individual can be declared a living saint, a joint conclave of the Inquisition and the Ecclesiarchy must first affirm that the declaration is true, and the individual just and pure. Some of these convocations have been known to last many years, with debate raging back and forth between the various factions until agreement is reached. Needless to say, the most earnest advocates of the benefaction are to be found amongst the Thorians. This faction of the Inquisition believe that the great Saint Sebastian Thor was in fact a vessel through which the Emperor took a direct hand in the course of history, and that other examples of such avatars are to be found among teeming billions of mankind. Others, notably of the Ordo Malleus, oppose such theories, seeing in them the threat of domination from the denizens of the warp. A living saint is an avenging angel, a terrible and wondrous being to witness, for they shine with the purest of light and bring death and destruction to the impure. It is also the case that one who burns twice as bright burns half as long, for no human can wield such power indefinitely. Hence the title Living Saint, for at her ascension the individual is already martyred, her death a self-fulfilling prophecy. The Sisterhood and the Witch Hunters. Throughout history, the Adepta Sororitas have been instrumental in many actions, some of which, due to their instigation at the hands of the secretive Ordo Hereticus, may never be written of in the official histories of the Imperium. Saint Aspera, 18th Canoness of the Order of the Bloody Rose, led her sisters in a war of faith against the tyrant of Denescura, liberating 100 worlds with the force of only 1,000 warriors. When the arch-confessor Cornelius preached at the war of faith that saw the demagogus of the second halo schism burned on pyres 20 meters high, it was the warriors of the Order of the Sacred Rose that broke the back of the cult's fanatical defense of the Palace of Radiance. When the notorious confessor Peteus led his pogrom against the mutants of Charak, it was the Order of the Ancient Shroud under Canoness Preceptor Crisima whose flames cleansed the streets of the foul taint of genetic deviancy. Though no complete record exists to describe it, it is believed that the Order of our Martyred Lady, acting at the orders of the witch finder Tenenberg of the Ordo Hereticus, who descended upon the St. Garret Torium, dragging hundreds of Adeptus Terra scribes, screaming to the excruciation chambers of Nemesis Tessera, and burning down the scriptorium. The Adeptus logged formal complaints with the very highest authorities on Terra, but was silenced when Inquisitor Tannenberg produced 300 specimen jars, each containing the preserved remains of a scribe, his previously hidden mutations uncovered for all to witness. Each stared from its jar in mute necrotic terror, his hideous form stark evidence of the horror lurking within the bosom of the administratum. Defenders of the Faith. As the 41st millennium drew to a close, the Adepta Sororitas were involved in some of the most infamous conflicts to erupt in living memory. On Armageddon, the Order of our Martyred Lady suffered losses so grievous at the hands of the Orcs that it changed its livery, replacing black robes with red to honour the martyrdom of the sisters who fell at Hive Tempestora. At the termination of that troubled millennium, the battle sisters of the Adepta Sororitas stood among the multitudinous defenders of the Cadian Gate, ready to sacrifice all for the very future of the Imperium and mankind, their faith as potent a weapon as their bolters, their devotion as strong a shield as their armour. Page 8. Radicals and Puritans. As with all ordos of the Inquisition, the Ordo Hereticus is riven with differing beliefs as to how the will of the Emperor is to be enforced. Some describe these divisions in terms of Puritans and Radicals, though. As with all things, this is an oversimplification. Unlike their brother Ordos, where the distinction between Radical and Puritan is more clean-cut, the differences that mark a Radical witch hunter from a Puritan witch hunter are much less clearly defined. There are all manner of differing philosophies within the Ordo Hereticus, and, as is the way of such things, the more extreme in their beliefs one faction becomes, the closer it tends to resemble its extreme opposing view. To those who are even aware of the work of the Ordo Hereticus, the image of the witch hunter is as a harsh guardian of mankind, a stern parent figure who protects those who cannot protect themselves against dark sorceries, heresy, and mutation. A witch hunter castigates those who traffic with witchcraft, blasphemers against the emperor and members of the ecclesiarchy who turn from the service of the emperor in the pursuit of temporal power. Witch hunters are figures of awe and fear, incorruptible and pure, who punish all forms of wickedness with a harsh but just sentence. They are ruthless in their pursuit of the emperor's enemies, and though thousands of innocents may be sacrificed to achieve their goals, these are negligible losses when the price of failure is so great. But even as there are many foes to combat, so too are there many ways to fight them, and it is not unknown for some witch hunters to turn the weapons of the enemy against them. To some, these inquisitors are radicals, to others, heretics. There are many witch hunters who are themselves psychic or utilize the power of bound witches to further their cause in hunting their prey, and these servants of the emperor cannot be counted as evil. As the radical cries that each and every weapon must be used in the battle for the emperor's soul, the Puritan rebuts that even by considering such a course of action, a man will damn himself forever. The radical may be branded so as much by his methods as by his usage of psychic powers, and such individuals are not above using witches to perpetrate evil acts in order to further the greater cause. But such differentiations are merely the most obvious points of conflict between witch hunters, as well as such outward threats as witchcraft and mutation. The Ordo Hereticus must keep watch on the ecclesiarchy to ensure that another tyrant, like the insane Lord Vandire, does not arise and lead the Imperium into a second age of apostasy. Maintaining such close contact with the ecclesiarchy can have its pitfalls, however, and it is not unknown for some inquisitors to become seduced by the wealth and prestige that such affiliation can bring. Indeed, it has been known for one Ordo Hereticus inquisitor to persecute another who has become lax in this duty, and thus allowed rogue clerics of the ecclesiarchy to exceed their authority in declaring wars of faith for their own ends. Even more contentious are those inquisitors who refuse to countenance the inherent hypocrisy of their calling. One of the most important tasks of the Ordo Hereticus performs is the hunting down and extermination of witches and rogue psychers. Though it is a cruel irony that the continued existence of the Imperium depends on beings of similar power. Psykers provide the means for interstellar communication, warp travel, and also sustain the very essence of the Emperor himself with their lives. Without Psykers, the Imperium would collapse into a collection of isolated stellar realms that, without the Emperor's guidance, would soon fall prey to the foul denizens of the warp. To the ultra-Puritan witch hunters, these Psykers, navigators, astropaths, sanctioned Psykers, and even space marine librarians are to be equally reviled and persecuted as any other witch, and it is here that their beliefs come full circle to become a dark mirror of the ultra-radicals. Quotation: "Though mankind is at the brink of this great apotheosis, you must be ever vigilant for the stillborn harbingers of the great change. Where you seek the pure and strong, there too will you find the impure and weak. Where you will find but one worthy life, you will also find a million twisted, deformed monstrosities for whom death by your hand is a mercy. Therefore, look first for the mutant, for he may never hide his sin from you, and in his midst there will be revealed that which you seek. But be ever vigilant, for even should you find one with the gift, only 1 in 1,000 Psykers will be strong enough to resist the perils of the Empyrean, and he be allowed to live." End quote. And Dominus on the duties of the Witchfinder, Inquisitor Malik, suppressed M38. Page 10. Duties and Organization of the Adepta Sororitas. The Adepta Sororitas is a diverse organization, and its duties reflect the many aspects of life in the Imperium with which the Ecclesiarchy, the Sisterhood's parent organization, concerns itself. By far, the greater proportion of the Sisterhood's members are battle sisters of the Order Militant, and it is the stern, power-armoured, bolter-wielding sister that the average Imperial citizen would most strongly identify with the incontrovertible power of the Ecclesiarchy. The Order Militant. On a day-to-day basis, the duties of the Orders Militant are many and varied, quite aside from their role as the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Hereticus. Every major world in the Imperium belongs to one of the cardinal dioceses, and will therefore host at least one ecclesiarchal cathedral and a multitude of servants, dignitaries, and clerics. Such a concentration of the ecclesiarchy's power must be defended, and so a significant force of battle sisters will be present at many such sites. The sisters provide a visible presence, guarding holy sites, escorting hierarchs, ensuring that the common citizen is suitably deferential in the presence of the great and good of the ecclesiarchy, and that the coffers are filled at collection time. The Imperium is crisscrossed by a complex network of pilgrim routes, and the sisters are responsible for maintaining the safety of those that travel upon them. Many are the helpless travellers set upon by raiders or outlaws whilst traversing the void or some isolated wilderness, who have been saved from a life of slavery by the timely intervention of the Adepta Sororitas. When the Ecclesiarchy declares a war of faith, it must follow the dictates laid down by the Decree Passive, meaning that it is exclusively female Adepta Sororitas that provide its standing fighting forces, joined by the Frateres Milita, bands of civilians, lay people, or Second Planetary Defense Forces. The sisters persecute the enemies of the Imperial Creed. With a single word, a bombastic confessor can preach the doom of an excommunicated world, and when such an undertaking is called for, it is the frantically loyal sisters of battle who lead the way, slaying the emperor's enemies with no compassion, heedless to the blasphemous protestations of innocents that assail their ears. When not actively prosecuting the ecclesiarchy's wars, the Sisters of the Order Militant divide their time between prayer and training. Indeed, to the Adepta Sororitas, the two disciplines are nigh inseparable. A sister may devote many long hours knelt before the high altar of her convent, fasting and meditating upon the meaning of a single passage in the litanies of faith, before gaining profound insight by the conclusion of her vigil. To the Adepta Sororitas, penitence and self-mortification is a vital part of life as a devout servant of the Emperor, for only through extreme self-denial can one truly gain an inkling of the sacrifice that the Master of Mankind himself has made for his faithful subjects. The training regimes practiced by the Battle Sisters of the Ordo Militant are derived from the martial values of the original daughters of the Emperor, and were initially laid down by their daughters' mistresses at their San Lior Shrinehold. For millennia, the sisters have practiced their unique method of war, combining combat doctrine and prayer, which enables them to accomplish feats upon the battlefield that appear miraculous to the unschooled. The most accomplished practitioners of these arts are the Seraphim and Celestians, each of which practice specialized styles of fighting that enable them to carry out very specific battlefield roles. The Seraphim utilize junk packs and are experts in hand-to-hand combat, while the Celestians are most often fielded as bodyguards for Adepta Sororitas leaders, focusing their hatred of the unholy to protect their charge. Only through constant and rigorous training and prayer can these specialists maintain their expertise. The non-militant orders. The Adepta Sororitas also contains a number of specialized non-militant arms, most notably the Orders Famulus, Hospitaller, and Dialogus. The Order Famulus form a network of chamberlains, advisors, and diplomats, whose role is to ensure that the Imperium's noble families work towards the ultimate good of mankind, brokering trade agreements, alliances, and marriages between families. The Famulus are also called to serve in the retinues of Ordo Hereticus Inquisitors, notably those of a Thorian persuasion, where their immediate knowledge of a family's bloodlines can prove invaluable in an investigation. The Orders Hospitaller provide surgeons, physicians, and nurses to all arms of the imperial military, with the exception of the Adepta Astartes, performing acts of great compassion in the execution of their duties. The soldiers under their care often regard them as saintly figures, and many have been canonized, often posthumously, following some act of great personal bravery in the face of the enemy. Sisters Hospitaller are often called to serve the Inquisition in a number of capacities. To a witch hunter, a surgeon's ability to keep a subject alive despite the most grievous injuries is most useful. In the persecution of heretics, even a sister Hospitaller will put aside her compassion, so great is her charge, and should a man turn his back on the blessed God Emperor of mankind. The sisters of the Orders Dialogus are scholars and advisors, experts in the translation of texts both human and Xenos, holy and blasphemous. Their services are frequently sought out by inquisitors, for their skills can unlock the most obscure cipher and uncover the most concealed reference that may bring a hidden traitor to justice. On the field of battle, they read aloud from holy texts and are expert at communicating with any local forces requisitioned by the Inquisitor overcoming any language barriers with ease. The Chamber Militant. The duties exercised by the Adepta Sororitas make them the ideal chamber militant for the Ordo Hereticus, which values their fervor and dedication above the services of any other organization. The ancient charters established at the conclusion of the Age of Apostasy and the very founding of the Ordo Hereticus allow the witch hunters to demand the services of the Adepta Sororitas at any time. Thus, the sisters find themselves in the service of the Inquisition, performing purity sweeps through imperial organizations, persecuting apostate clerics, challenging renegade Space Marine chapters, guarding the most dangerous of the Ordo's prisoners, and acting as wardens on the infamous black ships. These and 1,000 other duties are entrusted to the most holy servants of the Emperor. Quotation. Footnote. The Emperor is our father and our guardian, but we must also guard the Emperor. The structure of an order. Picture, if you will, a ladder or hierarchy. At the top, we have the order. Below that, the preceptory. Below that, the commandery. And below that, the mission. The order. The order is led by a canoness, who often has the title Canoness Superior. A canoness of a lesser order is in theory outranked by the canoness of the greater order from which it was formed. Preceptory. Some orders, notably the greater orders, maintain subsidiary convents, the largest of which are referred to as preceptories. The term is also used to define the largest organizational unit an order is ever likely to field, numbering up to 1,000 battle sisters, cloistered together at one location. The canoness who commands a preceptory has the title Canoness Preceptor. Commandery. The term used to describe a smaller convent, perhaps little more than a shrine and a garrison of battle sisters cloistered together to defend it. A commandery will be junior to a preceptory, and the term is also used as a company-level subdivision of a preceptory, consisting of up to 200 battle sisters. A canoness leading a commandery is referred to as a canoness commander. Mission. A mission is the smallest organizational unit of the Adepta Sororitas, and normally consists of a number of squads assembled to achieve a specified objective. A mission may be led by a palatine or by a more senior canoness, depending on the importance of the objective. This hierarchy is also applicable to the orders Dialogus, Hospitaller, and Famulus, etc. These orders generally operate at the lower levels, mainly mission and commandery, with preceptory being a largely organizational tier. For example, a mission from the order Famulus may consist of only a handful of sisters engaged in an inter-house trade delegation, while a commandery from the order Hospitaller may be a staff of sisters working in a field hospital or refugee camp. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any comments, please feel free to leave them down below. Give us a little thumbs up if you want, or subscribe. But I want to add a big shout out to Rawhammer80 for the original idea of this. He was reading a Tyrranid Codex, and I thought I would do a paint-along video as well. So big shout out to him for the idea. And hopefully I'll catch you around in the next video. See you around, gang.